Today is Training 15 Accelerate, which is trying to tie all of these together. And we're going to talk about my perspective on the level of commitment, what that means, core values and action, the secret, which is kind of fun. And we're going to review, we're going to kind of go really fast through all 14, just kind of a table of contents of all 14 trainings. So you'll get a really good bird's eye view, a perspective of it. Then we're going to talk about some really interesting numbers that superstar agents are accomplishing, which is just a mind blower. This guy is one of my heroes. Ralph Waldo Emerson was an American writer, essayist, lecturer, and poet in the 1800s. If any of you have ever read any of his work, he's known to be one of the American champions of individualism. So he is, really highly regarded in the finest colleges, and he wrote an essay that is one of my favorites called Self-Reliance. And obviously, for those of you that have known me or seen most of these trainings, that is really one of the goals, I think, of the superstar, really, really successful agent is to be self-reliant through your knowledge to make money in any market. So Emerson wrote this great essay called Self-Reliance, and he argues, he makes a kind of a point to believe your own thought, to believe what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, and that is genius. He was really typified the American ideal, freedom from the British Crown, that our government should be small, they should support the people, not dictate to the people, and entrepreneurial, complete self-reliance. So, his writing, which was 150 years ago or whatever it was just, really, a pioneer thinker in his time, and just really typifies the American ideal. So, wanted to bring that up because it really starts to put things in perspective for us. Now, this is anybody ever seen this Latin term? Te quaeris extra is Latin, and it mirrors what Emerson tries to teach us. And what that means in Latin is do not look outside yourself and look within. And it's kind of one of my benchmarks. If you want to look at it, it's the Latin version of achieving self-reliance. That there's no excuses. We're not dictated by markets, by government, by anything else. It's all about what we create on our own. Moving on with Emerson, he published these essays in 1950, and he listed what he called the representatives, a number of great men in the history of mankind. Plato, Swedenborg, etc. Shakespeare, Napoleon was on this, and also Wolfgang Goethe, which was the writer that he thought was one of the great men of all time. So this is, one of my heroes giving a list of his heroes, which I think was interesting. So yes, we're now in the workbook, obviously. But Goethe was a German writer and politician that died before Emerson in 1832, and his body of work was really epic and lyrical poetry. And here's my favorite Goethe piece that I've had. I used to carry this in my wallet. I've had it since I was in my 20s in various books. But I'd just like to read it for you. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy. The chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. The whole stream of events issues from the decision raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidences and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. And this is his most famous quote. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. So that's when you look up Goethe, that's his by far his most famous quote, which is really one's own call to action. And it kind of mirrors, when you look at Emerson's philosophy and some of his heroes, it starts sounding like a very, very similar theme, which is very American in its root. Moving on, we want to ask the question, who are you? A person of action, or one that allows excuses to run their lives? That's where the self-reliance comes in. And when I interview agents, I listen for flags that tell me where their mindset is. Are they strongly independent, or when they even explain their history, do they talk about limitations? And just recently, I've had a couple interviews with agents. They're just not a good match because of that. The really successful superstars, they don't have, any limitation is just a problem waiting to be solved, and they go through it. So to be really successful in our business, it starts with a mindset of wanting self-reliance, and we are people of action. So this is a question I want you to contemplate, and it can really help move us forward, I think. So we want to look at another question now that we're kind of wrapping up the training, is, are you really committed to superstardom? To be successful, you must make a commitment to work full-time at your real estate business, or do what's necessary to achieve success. 1 foot in and 1 foot out does not work, not for long anyway. So we're looking at this gal, and sooner or later, those horses are going to go different directions. Now, many of us have a vision of being really, really successful, running our own schedule, complete freedom that the real estate sales business offers us. But we have to start with some part-time gig. That's very, very common. But at some point in time, you've got to let go. You've got to go full-time. And I know that's a challenge financially for some folks, but that's what it takes. There's no such thing as a superstar that does real estate part-time, not in my knowledge, right? So they may, when they reach great levels of success, they may start doing other things, but that's on the other side of super success. So make the big money, it's a full-time gig. It truly is. Any of you familiar with the Legend of Cortez? I think the peak producer graduates have probably heard about Cortez. Cortez was a Spanish conquistador, led a number of expeditions, including from Spain to the United States. But what he's most famous for is in July 1519, his ships landed in Veracruz, Mexico. So in order to eliminate any ideas of retreat, Cortez scuttled his ships. Cortez scuttled all of his ships. This is a very famous story going back to the 1500s. So that was his way of motivating his troops. They had no way to get home. So that was his point of demarcation, where we are really now committed, because if you're not committed, you're going to die in Mexico. So that's what I call motivation there. So the question I want you to start contemplating is, this question needs to come up sometimes when things get tough, is how committed are you? Something to keep looking at for yourself. So we're going to review a little bit here in this whole question of commitment as to the 3 levels and where you want to be. And this goes back to the early training. A licensee, which is over about 500,000 people, I think, in the state of California have a real estate license. They're 1 foot in and 1 foot out. That's the typical. They're doing real estate part-time. Most of those do 0 deals a year, literally 0. Some of them will do a deal or 2 per year, and that's most people with a license. The real estate agent, but I mean kind of the standard real estate agent, goes full-time, but they're barely surviving, does 2 to 4 deals a year, and then the superstar really starts to take off. That's the full-time person that runs everything like a business and is really skilled. So that's, kind of the perspective, and you want to ask yourself the question, who do you want to be? And are you committed to do what it takes to be that successful? I want to review our core values, and we'll go over a few more things here as it relates to kind of a review of the past trainings. So our core values, particularly with the new brand we're going to be launching, first and foremost is integrity, a thirst for learning, being skilled negotiators, which is our deal-making skills, being creative problem solvers, really strong at solving problems for our clients, being community advocates, the whole Thrive initiative, innovation, efficient systems, and last but not least, humor. If we're not having fun, we got to rethink that as well. So this business can be very fun, particularly when the cash flow is flowing, because you've got a lot of freedom to enjoy it. How are we going to put our core values in action? So we want to have thriving clients by serving our clients with the best trained agents in the business. We're also going to express our core values in the community by becoming community advocates with the Thrive movement, and as you know, we're expanding that with a new Thrive area site concept, which is under development now. And then for all of you, becoming a thriving real estate agent yourself by using our success system and all we learn for it. We're always learning and sharing, and becoming great deal makers and problem solvers. So the core values touch really our clients, our community, and ourselves. You've all seen this. We've come full circle. We want to continue to refine our habits, skills, and systems of outbound contact, connecting with our clients, bonding with them, building those connections, and ultimately have all three areas that we touch thrive: ourselves, our clients, and our community. We've talked about the four roles or departments. One is as a rainmaker, which is really where the vast majority of your time should be spent on a daily basis, is marketing and prospecting and lead generation. Number two, as a deal maker, which is presenting, particularly your listing presentation, the pre-list preview phase when you see a seller, and your closing skills. Closing meaning getting contracts signed. And then 3 and 4, operations and financial management, which we want to continue to refine those systems, and the CRM will hopefully make us even more efficient. We talked about relational versus transactional. This is something that Brian in his Peak Producer course was really talked about, and I thoroughly believe it. Hold on one second. So let's walk through this one more time. Is on the transactional side, the agent thinks about the deal, and of course we want all of our deals to close, but the focus needs to be on not only the deal but ultimately the relationship, because every great deal can turn into a great relationship, or hopefully, and produce referrals. So the mindset needs to shift from the transaction or the one-time escrow to the relationship, not only with that person, that principal, your client, but with all the other people in the transaction. Short-term income, yes, we need short-term income, but we want to be focusing the macro perspective or mindset is building geometric growth in our business. Transactional thinker meets the deal need, and the relationship thinker meets both the deal need of that particular escrow and the relationship. Transactional thinker wants to cash a check. The relational thinker gets to cash the check but creates an advocate, which can be multiple times more beneficial financially if you work those relationships correctly. Transactional person is always thinking that they're just a salesperson, as opposed to the relational thinker that they're running a business and they're the business professional, like the CEO of their own company in a way. Always about the next deal, and the relationship thinker is about compound growth. This sounds like a broken record, but the priority must always be marketing and prospecting, and focus on your fundamentals first and foremost. So marketing and prospecting is where most of your day is set. And as you can tell in the way we're designing the CRM, it's about focusing on those outbound activities. That's what gets you out of inconsistent income. So even when you've got a lot of activities going, escrows going, etc., you still have to maintain the discipline to continue with your outbound actions, get those calls done, get the notes going, have those 15, 20-minute coffees, etc. That's what builds things for the future. So I want to move on to sports here a little bit and talk about how athletes achieve mastery, because there's a lot to learn. So in the football world, and I'm a big NFL fan, a quarterback has to learn the offense and get a lot of reps. They have to learn the offense. So they have to learn their offensive system. So your marketing and prospecting systems are your offensive system, and they have to do a lot of practice, and so do you. If you're a Major League Baseball player, you've got to do a lot of batting practice almost every day. And on the golf range, one of my favorite guys was Ben Hogan. I know Michael knows a lot about Ben Hogan. He's an avid golfer, but Ben was considered one of the greats of all time, won 9 major tournaments, 64 PGA tournaments. But that's not what's really interesting about Ben Hogan, not to me anyway. I want to talk to you about his career a little bit to give you a perspective for those of you who don't know anything about Ben Hogan. In 1949, he was in a head-on collision with a Greyhound bus in a fog-shrouded bridge. He threw himself across his wife in the car to protect her, and she would have been killed had he not done that. In this accident, he had a double fracture of the pelvis, a fractured collarbone, left ankle broken, chipped rib, near-fatal blood clots. He suffered lifelong circulation problems, other physical limitations, and his doctors, as he was in the hospital for 2 months, said he probably would never walk again, let alone play professional golf. So in that moment, the medical experts were saying this great golfer's career was over. Here's his car. Here's Ben Hogan's car, 1949. And if you could just imagine what it would have been like sitting in the driver's seat in that accident. He had a bus. There's the car. I mean, that looks like a fatal accident. But that's not what's interesting. Here's what's interesting. Ben Hogan won 3 majors in 46, 48, and 48. He was in that head-on collision in 49. He won 6 majors after the accident. Doctors said you can't walk again. That is when Ben Hogan became one of the greatest players of all time, and I would argue had the greatest swing of any golfer in history. In 1953, 4 years after that crash, Ben Hogan won the Masters, the U.S. Open, and the British Open, which this is the golf Grand Slam, the coveted Grand Slam. The modern Grand Slam has never been won. Bobby Jones won it when there were 2 amateur tournaments in 29. Tiger Woods won them in succession, but not in the same year. So no one's ever achieved the Grand Slam. The only reason Ben Hogan didn't win the PGA, it was the same week as the British Open. He couldn't win the Grand Slam because they had them scheduled on top of each other. They did change that. So here is, when you study sports, people will look back, this is one of the greatest achievements in the history of sports, and this guy could hardly walk. This is one of the most famous photographs in sports, which is Hogan hitting this on Marion in 1950 on the 18th tee to win the U.S. Open. So what's Hogan's secret? He had a secret. Well, before it was really revealed, some people thought it was the way he cupped his left wrist and other things. It was in Life magazine back then. Books had been written about this. But if you really study golf, Hogan's response to his famous secret was, it's in the dirt. People are going, that's no secret. What does that mean? But actually, it means everything. Hogan's secret was practice. What he meant by, I don't have a secret. I just worked harder than everybody else, and the system I created was by hitting balls like no one else. Here's a photograph of Hogan's hands, and it's kind of hard to see, but his hands were incredibly calloused along the way he held the club. So that's his secret, was in the dirt. His secret were the fundamentals of practicing golf to perfect it, to mastery, even with a broken body. In any event, this was a video of Hogan's swing, which you can see online. It was a thing of beauty. So what do we have to learn about this? Was his secret was in the dirt, which was essentially what he's saying is master the fundamentals. So what are your fundamentals? I would suggest, you ask the question, what is your sport? And that is making money as an agent in any market, anywhere, anytime. And again, what's the subtext of that? That's self-reliance. You must practice your fundamentals religiously. If you're going to win the U.S. Open, if you want to make $1 million a year as a real estate agent, you have to be a master at the fundamentals of our business. This is what separates superstars from the mediocre agent. Dialogues, presentations, and marketing systems. The superstar agent is never satisfied with a listing presentation because they always know they can improve it. So when you look at history of some of the great athletes, there is videotapes of Hogan with a caddy in the practice range 180 yards away with a bag of balls, and he would draw it into him, fade it into him, hit it to him straight, and it's landing right at his feet. If any of you guys play golf, that is incredibly hard to do. So his idea of perfection was so fine, he was frustrated that he couldn't birdie every 18 holes. That was his level of mastery. The superstar agents, $1 million in income above, are masters at their systems, their dialogues, their habits, and their presentations. They've got it down, and they're always working on it. So this business is not rocket science. It's really not complicated if you master the fundamentals. If you master the fundamentals. Also need to master your metrics. As you know, if you've seen the goal setting training, what you measure improves. You need to know them. You need to own them. And we don't track excuses, nor should you. And don't confuse activity with productivity. So obviously we're really stressing this in the CRM, but you want to have goals set out for yourself every week. How many calls, how many connections, how many meetings, etc. Get those personal notes out and start watching your metrics. As you know, some of you know, I used to do this in a massive Excel spreadsheet, very laborious. But what it revealed to me was just magical in the end, which how much was I making an hour? I wanted to know how much I made an hour, right? And so it took a lot of metrics to do that. And what I learned is when I was really mastering my fundamentals, really mastering the outbound actions, I could make between $800 and $2,000 an hour. Lawyers don't make that, not very many of them. Doctors, not very many make that much money. So when you're really good with your systems and you have everything rolling, you can be very efficient with your phone calls, with your meetings. You're really focused. And you start getting the closings, the deals going, the listings going, the closings going. You filter out the bad buyers. You're closing the good buyers. When you start putting that into a perspective of time, you start making a very, very high wage, very, very high rate. And to me, you only know that by mastering your metrics. So the CRM is going to help us with that, but it all comes back to mastering the fundamentals. Your key actions are your calls, your notes, your connections, which are the subsets of those, are your drop-bys, having coffee, lunch, or dinner with prospects or clients, cold door knocking, pre-list preview of a home, buyer meetings, meeting Thrive vendors in the marketplace, your listing presentations, your client parties, your business mixers, and any other kind of community networking. This is what it breaks down to. This is your business. This is where this is the field you play in. This is taking your reps as a quarterback, taking batting practice, going to the golf range. This is your work, right? And this is what will make you financially independent, is mastering these outbound actions and doing them religiously. So now we're going to review the training in kind of a fast and efficient way. So training 1, for those of you that have seen it, we talked about the power of geometric progression of working by referral. Working by referral. So what's the whole idea behind that is you want leads coming to you, right? I know in the early stages of your career, it's all outbound, it's hard work, but there will become a time when you get that call. I got a buddy that wants to sell his $2 million house in XYZ. I've referred him to you. That's the calls you want to make. The superstar agents are getting tens of millions of dollars of business coming to them. coming to them. Second training is some how-tos on building your PRN, which we call your powerful referral network, not to be a commodity. The key metric of 100, that's a key number in our business. So what does that key metric 100 mean? Anybody?
100 contacts.
100 contacts to get a listing. Okay? We learned that from my statistics going back more than a couple of decades. Mike Ferry uses that in a book he wrote in 1984 or 88, something like that. And the Keller Williams statistics that I had access to when I ran a team at Keller had the same number. So it's not made up. And again, I mean, when Jim first joined the team, I think he got his first listing on his 43rd contact. Sometimes you'll run way ahead. Sometimes you may have to burn through 120 contacts to get the listing. The point is, there's a connection between your outbound activities and getting listings. Campaign dialogue, 1, 2, 3 dialogue, and parting dialogue. So in the 1, 2, 3 dialogue, what are the 1, 2, 3s we're talking about? Anybody?
The dialogue.
What are those 3 components of the dialogue?
The one I'm always open for your referrals. I think that's number 3.
That's down here. Never too busy for your referrals. Or you could use the campaign dialogue or the departing dialogue as part of that. That's 3. What's number 1?
Campaign.
Campaign dialogue is its own dialogue.
Okay.
Can I help you in any way? Can I be of assistance to you? But the key word is help.
And values?
Value, yes. Very good, Denise. That's number 2. So 1, 2, 3 is help, value, and referral. And you can use these in your own words in the beginning. Use the dialogues as they're written, right? This is part of your fundamentals. This is like you saying, going on the golf range, and I say, let's practice our 8-iron, and you pull out a 5-iron, right? You got to know your clubs. You got to know how to hold them. You got to know how to stand. You guys are going to have to know this stuff. You need to memorize it. Campaign dialogue. Who knows a campaign dialogue by heart? Anybody? Jim.
Hi, Scott. If you or anybody you know, friend or family member, was thinking about buying or selling a home, you have an agent you would refer them to.
Excellent. That is the campaign dialogue. And there's a couple variations. If you know them well, you change it up a little bit if you don't know them at all. But that is the campaign dialogue. There are that type of dialogue, that wording is called different things in our industry depending on the coach or the brokerage firm. I call it the campaign dialogue because it's like a politician campaigning for his votes in the marketplace. What did Brian Buffini call it? The mayor dialogue. Mayor campaign. Yeah, if you're running for mayor, similar. Parting dialogue, or we also might call that the departing, or you're about to leave, right? You mentioned it kind of in a way already, Denise. What was that?
Yeah, by the way.
I'm never too busy for
your referrals.
Your referrals, right. So those 3 are your first fundamental dialogues. Orrin brought up a really interesting request a while back to put all the dialogues in a single document, which we are planning on doing, by the way. Third training, thrive by creating referrals. We introduced the whole concept of running your day, which I call and go. In other words, your mornings should be consumed with your outbound calls, right? In your CRM is up on your computer, and you are smiling and dialing, logging those calls, those notes, scheduling the next calls, call. Then you get organized, you hit the field, or go into the marketplace in the afternoon. So call in the morning, go in the afternoon. The whole concept of personal notes, which is so simple. Your grandmother or your mother may said thank you cards when you get gifts as a kid. Same concept. It's so underutilized, so simple, but makes such a huge impact. You want to systematize personal notes. Have them in your car. So when you're on an appointment, listing presentation, or previewing a house in your pre-list mode, you can do it right in your car, go back and put it on their doorstep or in their mailbox. The whole concept of drop-by or connections. Our business does not happen on the phone. We make contact on the phone, but you really make the deal in person. You've got to have that level. You've got to have a level of trust with your clients, and you do that in person. Yes, we're on the phone constantly, I understand that, but that does not, it doesn't end there, it just starts there. So your connections are your key thing. A lot of agents make the mistake thinking mailings will do the trick, right? Mailings do the trick. And if you study the training, you'll know that there's statistics that the success rate of getting a deal is 700 times greater in person than with a letter. So the letter is just a door opener, so to speak. You've got to then follow it up and go meet that person. And then training 3, we introduced the Thrive platform. And its first and fundamental purpose is for you to be able to network in the area and offer something to the public, meaning the consumers and homeowners and buyers, and give free advertising to local merchants on the community site, which then opens up a dialogue of you that's really not related to real estate, but it's an icebreaker. So that's the whole concept with Thrive. Training 4, leading buyers to buy, the whole concept of having a system of dealing with the buyers, and at the root of that is the protocol, which is you screen them on the phone. And we have dialogues, obviously. Screen them on the phone. Are they ready to buy now? Have they been approved for a loan, etc.? You want to filter out buyers on the phone. Then if they pass that test, they have to get pre-approved financially. You have to have evidence of that first, and then you go show them property. And you meet them first. Buyers that won't meet you are not real buyers. They want you to be a cab driver. So I want you to adopt the mindset of dealing with buyers as you are already a dominant listing agent. You're already a dominant listing agent. You're busy. You're fast. You'll take on the buyer if it's a deal right now. If it's not, don't deal with them. Or you can, kind of put them into a system where maybe they have to have their credit corrected and they get financial approval later. And we had some buyer relationship and engagement dialogues, property feedback form, and of course one of the breakthroughs with this whole concept, which I have adopted many, many years ago, is you send the buyer out to look at homes initially, screen neighborhoods. And of course, what do most agents think? Well, they're going to go hire another agent. Not if you run the system properly, which is daily contact. They're out looking at the neighborhoods, but you're checking the MLS for them every morning, and you make a 20-second phone call, nothing new today, nothing new today, nothing new today. Listing popped up. With that kind of level of communication, which is way beyond what most agents do, you maintain the relationship and you have them do the initial work. That's how you manage buyers. That's the breakthrough. And trust me, this system works. This is the way superstars manage buyers. Training 5, we introduced the concept of becoming a dominant listing agent with a whole pre-list and the pre-list documentation strategy, using risk reversal, how to preview a home, seller dialogues, lots of stuff in here, a lot of good information. And stop me if you guys have questions on any of these concepts or training. So, training 6, we introduced the listing presentation, 85-slide PowerPoint. So you need to start becoming really, really familiar and practicing this at home. We're going to do a listing presentation workshop soon where we'll kind of brainstorm it. In a listing presentation workshop, we may take a section listing presentation, go around the room, and you give it to us, right? So it's okay to stumble. It's a learning type environment to get better. It's a workshop. But outside of that, you need to be really familiar with it and practicing. I had a new agent. It's on our team. His name is Chad Damon. He's in Hollywood Hills. Asked me a question last night, was the whole thing about risk reversal, the performance guarantee. If I don't sell your house in 59 days, I'll lower my commission. You should have a listing presentation with that in and one without. So it's just basically a quick edit in the PowerPoint, and you have one and without. The reason is sometimes you want to offer that to a client, sometimes you don't need to. So you don't want to have to stumble through the listing presentation and go, oh, skip that slide. That would be awkward, right? So you have two listing presentations with risk reversal and one without. The risk reversal component is really strong in the pre-list mode to help separate you or cause questions in the minds of the seller, which calls them to pick up the phone, or they might say, what's with this guarantee? Almost skeptically. But the fact that you've drawn them in, now you have a relationship. Now you can start talking it through. So not always do you need it. Not always should you use a risk reversal guarantee, but it should be part of your arsenal as in your weaponry as a pre-list, also in the listing presentation. Training 7, outcome visioning and goal setting. We went into the science of goal setting and how important it is, and things that you measure improve, the whole idea of making them specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So you'll see a lot of information going back 20 or 30 years called SMART goals. That's what the acronyms stand for. And you'll also see SMARTER goals, SMARTER, which is evaluate and reevaluate, which we talk about in that training. So being a real estate agent is a perfect business to be really good at goal setting, because we're about deal making, right? Training 8, bonding with the unexpected extras. We introduce the idea of business mixers, client parties, and all of those techniques going above and beyond. Deepening the connection with your clients. Want to dispel the whole issue. There's a lot of procrastination here. Business mixer is the easiest thing to do. It could be 3 other people having coffee, right, in the marketplace. Start small, just get one done, go from there. Don't wait to put this thing off for months. I have to have 20 people come. You'll never get it done. So you round up people in your marketplace that have a business there. It almost doesn't matter what their vocation is. Just start the process. You're appealing to their own desire to build their own business. So that's probably one of the easiest things to start in this whole bonding with unexpected extras is a small business mixer that could be nothing other than meeting a few people, right? So what I want you to do is not wait for perfection, just start doing it. Number 9, buyer, seller, insider secrets. We introduced the art and science of the magical buyer letter. And the essence of that is do some low cost or no cost, like Craigslist ads, and start accumulating some buyer interest in your target market. Find out what they're looking for. They become the fuel for you to go into the marketplace with a very, very succinct, what we call buyer letter, either delivering it or mailing it to sellers to unearth sellers interested in selling that are not on the market yet. Once you do this and do every step right, it's a gold mine. You end up starting to, over time, you create a private market. You'll increase your list of buyers that are looking in that marketplace. You'll increase your list of sellers that are not in the market that want to sell. Some of them you need to wait 6 months when they retire or whatever. There'll be all kinds of variables and variations, but you'll start creating a database of your market, and you're the liaison, you're the go-between. The hidden benefit to this is you're going to unearth listings right now. You're going to unearth listings right now. That's the hidden benefit of this system. And then we also talk about in this training getting buyers off the fence. Techniques of the procrastinating buyers. They either buy or you move on, one of the two. So we're talking about kind of some of the steps in the buyer letter real quickly. So you get the Excel file ownership data from Chicago Title. It's a CSV file. You then save it as a Microsoft XLS file. The next step, and for those of you who have done this, correct me if I miss a step, then you go into the MLS and you clean the data. So I would save it as a working file, maybe version 1.1, and you delete the actives, the pendings, and contingent backups, because you can't mail letters to those consumers, those sellers.
Can you say this all again? I want to write it.
Okay. Yeah.
Save the Excel file.
Okay. Well, let me back up a little bit, because we can go through this quickly. So what area are you working in, Denise?
Calabasas.
Calabasas. Okay. So you would select an area of Calabasas. We're gonna go really fast through the buyer letter. Real fast through the buyer letter. So you pick your target market, right? Whatever that is, streets or whatever. You get the ownership data. Right? You take the ownership data, you save it as an Excel file, and you clean it. You get rid of all the actives, contingents, right? You with me so far? So now we have a clean database. Then we take the buyer letter and put that into Word. We connect the database. Now we have a database. We connect the database to Word, which is choosing the merge file source data. And then we make sure that the fields in words are correct, homeowner's name, etc. You can pull them in, insert field, and then you merge the letter. It comes out as one long Word document, letter after letter after letter, and you print it. Now this is simplified, but those are the major steps. And now you have 500 personalized letters to Mr. and Mrs. Smith and your buyer letter on your stationery, right? That's it. So you can then walk the streets and hand deliver those or mail them. That's it.
Connect database to Word, and then source file, what was it right there?
Once you tell Word, this Excel file is my database, then Word understands that there's column header field titles, owner's name, last name, street address, bedrooms, etc. And you just got to make sure those field names are correct in the Word document. And then when you do merge, it'll do the letters. Almost no one gets this right at the first time. The letters are going to get screwed up, so you go back into your Word document. Okay, delete that. Let's start over. Let me clean that field up until it starts to look right. You have to do it a few times.
Any chance this could be like a YouTube moment where you can record that? That would be.
Well, there's
an
an art and science of the buyer letter document, right? That is in the resource center. That's a step-by-step as a Word document. But the idea of creating this as a how-to video is probably a really good one. The only glitch about that is the video would change depending on the version of Word you're using and whether it's PC or Mac Word.
Because there's plenty of like how to do mail merges videos out already.
But the biggest holdup people have is right here.
Yeah.
Is right here. Is merging the database to the document.
Yes.
Right?
That's where I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was wondering if that was.
Yeah, we could probably do that. In either case, if you're going to do it as a note card, the wedding invitation, it should be a wedding invitation size envelope, and you can do it in two ways. You can do an 8.5 by 11, you fold it in half and put it in, or you could do a half 8.5 by 11 as a short buyer letter, and it's just one. But the envelope's the same. The letter is actually printed. The letter or the buyer note, call it, is printed, but the envelope is hand addressed. That's the key. Because
and your signature at the end of the printed
letter?
Yeah.
Don't do that with a computer. Sign that by hand. That's
by
a
hand, right?
yeah. That's a red flag that it's a computer talking to them and not you.
Is that the only thing that needs to be handwritten on the letter?
Well, your signature. It's a professionally written letter, and you sign it. Dear Mr. Smith, here's what I have going. Sign Orrin, and it's a real signature. I would even use blue ink, so it's glaring real, not black ink, because sometimes a black ink looks like it's part of the computer. So I would use blue ink, so your signature just stands out that that's a real signature.
Now the wedding invitation envelopes are usually pretty small.
If you read the Art and Science of the Buyer letter, what I recommend is they're 8.5 by 5. Is it 5 and a? What do you think about
8 3/4 by 5 and 3/4.
Yeah, it's exactly half of an 8.5 by 11 letter. Okay, and then you hand address the envelope, so it looks like a wedding invitation coming in. That's where the work comes in. And once you get rolling, you run an ad on Craigslist, you can find gals that'll do it for $10-12 an hour, and they'll knock out 1,000 envelopes in 3 or 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, whatever, $50-60. You've got your envelopes done. They'll insert the letter, hand address. They use the database. You print out the database form, right, and the letter, because sometimes the mailing address is different than this property address. So they have to check the Excel spreadsheet to get that. And they do the hand address, the envelope, stamp on it, boom, done. In the beginning, if you're going to do 200 or 300, you could do it yourself, which is probably advisable so you understand every step, which helps you delegate the next mailing. Make sense? If you want to do things perfectly, this is how you do them. Now, what do most agents do? They do a mailing and they'll put a computer label on it. And an 9.5, number 10 envelope with a computer label. Joe Realtor, it's like, gone. They don't convert. So I'm telling you the steps that make your conversions the highest. The first conversion is, do they read it? Do they read it? Do they open it and read it? Okay, moving on. Number 10, art of negotiation. We talked about negotiating styles and the 4 key elements of a negotiation. One of the breakthrough concepts here is you separate the problem from the people. If you remember nothing about the negotiation training, remember that. Separate the problem from the people, because it's human nature when the buyer's agent calls you up screaming and they deliver bad news is you blame the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent is the messenger of the stress he or she is under from their client, and that's where the problem resides, and you need to separate them. You need to keep recruiting the other agent as your advocate to partner and solve the problem, which is between you two, not part of you two, but it's in the middle of the table. We're both trying to solve it. Negotiating styles, we talked about all of those, so you're aware of them. This is a training that needs to be watched several times, and not only that, I encourage you to even read some books. If nothing else, check them out from the library. The first and foremost book you should read is called Getting to Yes.
I have that at work.
Getting to Yes. And they go into detail on the 4 elements of a negotiation. You need to be an ongoing student of the art of negotiation as a superstar deal maker. Training 12, energy and time management. This used to be early in the training schedule. It was moved much later, so some of you may have missed this. But we first talk about energy management from the athlete's perspective. And if you think just the visual concept here is you think about in the Olympics, the marathoners, particularly the guys from Kenya who often win the marathon, and they have no fat in their body. They look like they're walking death. They're so skinny, right? As opposed to, this is Michael Johnson, the American 400 sprinter who was, multiple gold winner, phenomenal athlete. I mean, just look at his body. He's not a weightlifter. He's a sprinter. But he runs 100-yard, he ran 220s and 400s or 440s and relays. And, he's like the most incredible athlete. He's older now, he's retired, but his body as compared to a marathoner is distinctly different. But he's geared towards short spurts and rest. The marathoner doesn't take a break. And it almost looks like he's about to die, he's burned out. The message there is you want to be conscious of managing your energy. That's why calling in the morning is great. You get up, you're rolling, make calls, a lot of energy, you take a break, organize for the afternoon, go. Sometimes slow down, sit in your car, listen to music, take a walk, take a break, right? So that's energy management. You can't just go all the time and you just burn out, and then you start becoming non-productive. So you go for short spurts, take a break. And then obviously we talked about time management, running your calendar and all that good stuff, and prioritization and workflow. Training 13, mindset, attitude, and body. Talked a lot about nutrition here, and a killer mindset. And the insight on the mindset is going to, for those of you who haven't seen this training, revolves around the goal of self-reliance. Also in this training, we give you some websites and some doctors that are just experts in nutrition. One of them was Bill Clinton's. Clinton lost a tremendous amount of weight. He had a heart attack, had bypass surgery, etc. So one of his doctors, I have all of his books and read him. So this is not about to be preachy, but it's about some insights that'll help you have increased energy and vitality to help you achieve what you want to achieve. Training 14 we did last week, obviously financial systems, so we don't need to go into too much review on that, but we gave you some tips on Quicken, QuickBooks, RoboForms. Start looking at your budgets, seeing where your money's going, and it helps you kind of map out things you want to correct, how to cut back on expensive, and try to managing your money like a real professional business person. So let's move on to what is possible. What is possible in our business, and most agents don't really realize this, is there are many, many agents that make professional athlete income. Professional athlete income. So, baseball players are one of the most highly paid sports. Football is not quite even close to what baseball is. NBA players, very, very high level of income. Now you're seeing these monstrous contracts with athletes making $10 to $20 million a year. I don't know what Peyton's making, but he's 18 or 20 million a year. Phenomenal income. Most people don't think, because they're famous, we view that as just completely out there, unreachable. But in our business, you just don't know who they are. Let's walk through some of them. This is 8.5 months volume in 2013. It's hard to read, so I'll walk you through it. 8.5 months of volume, middle of September, about 3 weeks ago, for the United States. Ben Caballero out of Addison, Texas, this is individual sales, $668 million in business. He's got a staff.
It's not too bad.
Big staff. Big staff. Serena.
Throughout their career?
No. This is in 8.5 months. That's this year.
The beginning of the year.
Okay. Now, we're real estate agents. What's the first thing you do with that number?
Divided.
You start to
2.5%.
You multiply it times 2.5%, 3%, or 4%. What does that mean, right? So 2% of that number is $13 million, right? And this is not even a full year. Serena Boardman out of New York, $393 million. Mauricio Umansky, he's right here in Beverly Hills, $378. Kurt Rappaport, $346. Jade Mills, we almost did a deal together many years ago, but we didn't. She's in Beverly Hills. So look, 1, 2, 3. Beverly Hills, Beverly Hills. Jade Mills, Coldwell Banker. Drew Fenton, Beverly Hills, $319 million. Jeff Hyland, Beverly Hills, $237. Number 14 in the United States, Chris Cortazzo. He was on the show, right? Out of Malibu, $236 million. Who was Stephanie up against to get that $50 million listing in Malibu? Chris Cortazzo. She beat him out for that listing using a strategy we laid out. And then this goes on. This list has 500 people on it. But if you take 2%, 3%, choose your number, this is 9 months worth of sales. What are they making? They're making the same amount of money as the starting shortstop for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're just not famous like in the public eye like athletes are. These are career pros. Chris Cortazzo started off as a buyer's agent. Didn't have the network 10, 15 years ago. Advertised, I'm a buyer's agent in Malibu. He didn't have the listing inventory. So he was just trolling for people wanting, who didn't already have representation to move in to Malibu looking for property, and now he's the dominant listing agent. When Stephanie went up against him, whatever that was, earlier this year, I think we found he had 78 listings in Malibu. 78. What's he have for sales price in Malibu? What, 12 million, something? Let's just say it's 10 million. That's $780 million of inventory under his control, right? This guy doesn't have to worry about outbound actions anymore. Why? Business is coming to him. Coming to him. Would you come over and look at my house? Would you come over and look at my house? Heard about you. I want you to sell it. Boom, 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 boom. Making deals. So once you really look at the reality of our business, it puts a different mindset on what's possible. It's not impossible. There's people doing it every day of the year, all over the United States. This guy's in Texas, for God's sakes. He just has a big organization underneath him. Boston, Aspen, Colorado, Bridgehampton, New York, on and on. Pretty interesting stuff. So how do you get there? Marketing and prospecting, it's got to be a daily priority. You do that first, find time for the rest. Goal focused. Pretty simple stuff. But so few agents really get it and do it. Becoming a great deal maker. Practice your dialogues, your listing presentations, your scripts in training 5, answers to objections in training 5. And you want to become the master of the living room. The whole Jerry Maguire scene, right? And your closing skills. Closing skills. All becoming a great negotiator and deal maker. You need to be really comfortable. And you know what happens? Once you start getting the dialogues, the scripts down, the listing presentation down, it becomes fun. You're never shocked. You don't always get every deal. But you go in with a lot of confidence that you know you're going to do your best. You can handle almost anything thrown at you. You're going to have fun doing it. It's a chess game. And every time you do it, you get a little bit better. Operations manager is all about your systems. Financial manager is a whole mindset shift of running your business like a business, and your goal is to get checks ahead. What I mean by that is if your average commission check's 25 grand, as you as the COO of your own business, you want to start having checks ahead in your business account and live on a salary. So you got your business account, that's where your commissions are going into. They're both personal checking accounts with your bank, unless you're incorporated in LLC, which almost nobody is as a real estate agent. But you run that account probably in Quicken or QuickBooks, and your idea is to just keep plowing money into that, closing deals, get checks ahead. Don't spend it all, right? So you want to start building your business, if that makes sense. So here's a quick checklist for yourself. Number 1, make a list of what you have in your life that's great right now. Sometimes we lose sight of that. It could be your children, your significant other, your health, your religion, whatever comes to mind for you. Then, from that, what must I get rid of? Negative people, karma, problems, etc. Could be financial problems. Could be anything that just hits you. I really want this out of my life. Third is, what do you have a really burning desire to create in your life? So these are questions, and this kind of ties in to the outcome visioning training, your outcome visioning. In other words, I'm sitting here relaxed, have my glass of wine, it's 8 o'clock at night, everything's okay, done for the day. What's life look like in 3 years? Where am I? Who am I with? Am I taking vacations? What car am I driving? The house I live in, my bank account, etc. And this all ties into your outcome visioning. Invariably, because becoming this super successful person and creating this great freedom, it's a different mindset, and some people can't go along that. I'm not going to take that ride with you.
Caller ID unknown.
Some people are not going to take that ride with you, and they may be associates or friends of yours that are just glass half empty people, as opposed to glass half full people. We need to be really positive, excited, having fun at our business, and there's people around us sometimes that just are a drag. Sorry to say that. You got to get rid of them. If you really think about these questions, the transformation for you already will start to take place and accelerate. Superstars. So we saw the list of some of the superstars, some of which are living, within 20 miles of where we are today. What do? They go on offense. They go on offense and attack the day. They don't just sit back and wait for the business to come. They have to go at it. They have to go at it with a vengeance, with vitality, with tenacity. Superstars re-energize in creative ways. Talked about energy management. They know how to regroup, then attack again. It could be 1 hour, 1 week, 1 day, 1 month. So in any particular time frame, the strategy is to re-energize and attack. has a will not be denied attitude and mindset. Will not be denied attitude and mindset. Has a goal of self-reliance. That's really what it's all about for me, is the goal of self-reliance. When you have mastered this material and other material that's relevant, and have your dialogues down, your skills, your presentations, your systems, you will have the know-how of how to make money regardless of anybody else, regardless of the broker, regardless of the market, regardless of the seller, regardless of the buyer, regardless of the city. You will have the ability to go into the marketplace in a fairly quick amount of time, start generating cash flow. That's self-reliance. The superstar measures action and performance, continually is improving his or her systems, and ultimately knows how to have fun. Final action week for this training is each morning ask yourself, who's going to sign a contract for me? That's the superstar mindset. That's the superstar mindset. Each morning, who's going to sign a contract? What buyer is going to sign an offer? What seller is going to sign a listing agreement? What counter is going to be signed today to put that deal in escrow? Listing, buyer agreement, final counter. That's a question, when you get organized for the morning, you do a mental checklist. Who's going to do deals today? And as some of you experienced agents know, new agents may not know this, we call them sides. So sometimes you double-side a deal. You represent the buyer and the seller. You take a listing, right? That's a contract. So but essentially, when we look at production, those are what we call sides. So sometimes you're going to have days when you're doing 5 or 6 deals. 2 counters signed, got 2 listing agreements signed, buyer made an offer. Boom. You're a deal maker now. Once you've gone through all of these trainings, and I know most of you have not gone through all of them, you are a deal maker. You just have to get your skills a little bit better through practice and time. And your mindset should be to make deals every day. And it's time to go on offense and stay there. And final thought from me is thank you. Thank you for being here. It's happy to share this information with you. Here we go. Thanks for coming, everybody.